Hello, this is Property Matters, a weekly catch-up on the world of property, supported by Fairview International Property Consultancy and auctionproperty.co.uk. We're live every week on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and our website propertymatterstv.co.uk. If you're watching on our website, leave us a Google review, and if you're watching on the socials, get involved in the comments section below. The email address for any topics you want us to discuss, hello@propertymatterstv.co.uk. We also have a podcast version of the show if you'd rather listen to us than look at us, and that's available from any of the main podcast platforms on the other side of the screen. So let's take a look at the week's property news with our property expert, Joe Joshi. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Paul. Hi, listen to all our listeners and viewers. We're all having a tongue-twisting morning today, I think. Interesting subject, which actually we're going to share that personal experience. Over to you, Mr. Allen.
Yes, well, indeed. And that's because of this particular story that's taken our interest this week. Half of home buyers hit by delays ahead of stamp duty deadline. So what they're saying here, this is a survey by Moverly, and they say just over 51% of home buyers, just over half, currently aim to complete before the 1st of April, of course, when the stamp duty rates change. And they've experienced delays with their purchase, with solicitors' delays and lack of material information as the key causes. And the survey found that 51% of these home buyers had experienced delays with respect to their property purchase since they'd had their first offer accepted. A lack of proactivity from solicitors ranked as the most common reason behind these delays, whilst the second biggest factor was the seller's failure to provide material information. The latter is a key aspect that can impact the former, as one of the most time-consuming parts of the conveyancing process, in particular, is the collection of material information. This information is required for a number of key reasons before a sale can complete, of course, such as the details of restrictive covenants and HM land registry documents. The dreaded chain also made up top three of the most common reasons for current delays in the property market. As a result of these delays, 82% of home buyers surveyed by the provider of material information digital property packs are now concerned that they will fail to complete by the 1st of April, and in doing so will be hit with an increased stamp duty cost. While 74% plan to continue with their purchase and stomach the increased cost, 12% stated that they would need to reduce the price they offered on their chosen property, whilst 9% would need to reassess their position in the market with respect to the mortgage. Some 5% went as far as to say that they would actually miss the deadline and they would need to pull out of their purchase altogether. So quite an interesting story. And where are we now? We're in end of January almost, so we've got February, March, and April. Yes, so really, I mean, I've got a personal experience to share in a moment, but it does look rather iffy if you're looking to exchange and complete by the 1st of April, even as we sit here now on Sunday, the 19th of January.
Yes, I mean, the thing with this is that, Paul, the deadline, there are two issues with this particular deadline. One is, of course, the stamp duty deadline. The other is that a lot of lenders also have a deadline on their offers. So if someone's made an offer, a mortgage offer, it normally stands for 30 days, 90 days, depending on what the process is. And if that isn't dealt with in that given time, then those borrowers have to go back to the lenders and get that revitalized again, remembering that the rates have been up as yo-yos. So when they look at the lending rates, they could turn around and say, well, actually, if we actually went back to them and let's say the rate has dropped somewhere in the system, they will obviously want to benefit from that drop. So they will consider going back to the lender and asking for a renewed mortgage offer, which will also take time. But the other thing that has been causing a delay, which has been a quiet backlog, is the land registry. Since COVID, land registry have been really behind in registering documents. And there's a big backlog of documents that still are not coming forward. So that combined with, of course, the solicitors who are the main conduit in the whole of this process, who are dragging their feet on various areas, does not help buyers at all to achieve the goal that they want to. And, you know, when you're a first-time buyer, and this is very, very crucial to first-time buyers, or anyone at the helm of the chain, but certainly the first time buyers, they need to make sure that every penny matters. So if it means extra costs or losing the stamp duty opportunity, and let's say that's worth 5 or 10 or 15,000 pounds, that is a deal breaker for them. So it is important for them to try and get this done in the given time. Otherwise, they're likely to pull back, and then there's a collapse of the chain.
I can actually verify about the land registry because I had to make a change on the property I've now sold. And that was registered with the land registry in approximately mid June. And by mid October, when the house had actually got an offer on it, that paperwork hadn't even been started. That's 4 months. However, there is a way through it, and the solicitors did explain to me that actually you're able to go up when and the only condition, I think, or the main condition, is if there is now an offer on the property, then you can mark the case as urgent, and then they did deal with it within 2 weeks. But that is extraordinary. 4 months to not even open the file, and then they can actually do it in 2 weeks if they need to put their mind to it. Does seem rather
Yeah.
extraordinary.
It's ridiculous, really. But then it always makes you tell them, you might as well tell them you got a buyer, 4 months previously, and you might have actually had all the paperwork done in advance. It's really creating extra stress and problems for people that actually want to move.
Yeah, I thought I'd share my own conveyancing experience because it's very fresh in the mind and literally completed yesterday. On Friday. And interestingly, looking at the overall time frame of it, it started. The offer was in the first week of October, and the completion was on Friday, the 17th of January. So this last Friday. So I thought I'd just talk you through that process because it's been interesting. So that's 14 weeks to do that. So that's 98 days. I was just checking a moment ago. I wasn't ignoring you. I was just checking on my phone. That was 98 days. So 14 times 7 is 98. And that's 98 days. So that if I'd had a mortgage, which I didn't have to, thankfully have to do, that 90-day offer would have expired, wouldn't it? Because 98 days is
That's right.
longer. There's longer than the 3 months. So taking that out of it, there was no mortgage work to be done, so there was nothing of that complication there. So if I just take you through the chain, somebody was buying my house and I was buying another house. That was the end of the chain. At the bottom of the chain, the people buying mine had a buyer, and that was, interestingly, and I thought this is a good reason to discuss this on Property Matters, was a private sale. So I thought it'd be useful, just for the sake, because I didn't know anything about a private sale, what that actually meant and what the implications of it were. And it seemed that actually most agents are very negative about private sales. So why don't you take us through what a private sale is and why most agents seem to be very negative about them?
Okay. So first and foremost, look, any sale is a sale, but the private sale does cause a number of issues. And one of them is that there is no follow-up process. They're not actually obliged to tell you what the situation is. And the reason why agents don't like a private sale, and that private sale could be in any form. It could be someone that's perhaps been renting a property and then decided to buy it off the landlord, and that is a deal between them. It could be that it could be somebody in a member of family, a friend, it could be anyone that they've chosen to sell that property. And obviously, they will use a private sale primarily because they're not now having to pay a set of fees or selling fees to an agent. So there's a big saving for them. However, the reason why agents don't like them is that there is no one to go to get an update. The only person to go to get an update is the actual seller. Now, the seller is not minded to give you any update because he probably doesn't know. And his answer or her answer is going to be, you'll have to talk to my solicitor. Now, the solicitor will turn around and say, well, actually, I'm not obliged to talk to you. I'm only obliged to talk to my client. So please don't ring me because I can't tell you anything because of the confidentiality aspect. So he's protected. The seller that is using the private sale is protected because he doesn't know. And so therefore the agent gets extremely frustrated because he can't move his chain forward. And because he can't move his chain forward, it means that he can't get paid. And everybody else in the meantime is phoning that agent and saying, can you not do something about this private sale at the bottom? Nobody knows what's going on. No one knows who the buyer is, let alone where it is in the conveyancing process. And the seller isn't making any conversation at all. So those are the frustrations, and that frustration, they avoid wanting to do that through an agent because they're saving money. But actually, it's a fallacy, because by not using the agent and not agreeing for someone actually to follow up the conveyancing system and chase the solicitors and find out what the mortgage is from the buyer that they've got and all that sort of stuff, it means that the whole of the transaction is now inadvertently delayed, to beyond time. And it could be that, and you wouldn't know this, that the buyer that the private sale is have maybe fallen out. They might not be there anymore, and they're trying to do a deal with somebody else, but you don't know that. It's the unknown aspect that delays the process, and it's the unknown that makes it difficult for agents to want to actually have them in the private sales sector, whilst the seller is having a benefit. So hypothetically, it might not be a massive benefit, Paul. It might be only a £2,000 benefit. Let's say they're selling a property for £200,000, and the agent was going to pick up a 1% or a 2% fee, a 4 or 5 grand. But if you look at the value of that agent, that 4 or 5 grand is actually cost everybody else at the top a huge amount of heartache, and then they want to. So your buyer, their buyer is a private buyer, really, or one removed. People will start saying to you and your buyer, you need to sell to somebody else, because we can't communicate with these people. We don't know who they are. They're wasting your time. And you might be able to have a contact. You might have had a cup of tea with them while you showed them around the house or whoever it might be. But afterwards, they don't want to talk to you either, because they can't tell you that their buyer is actually not getting a mortgage offer or has a CCJ and therefore is struggling to get the mortgage offer. All of that information, that material information that would make the process smoother, is information that is not available. So that's part of the reason, the main reason why agents do not like private sales, because we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think my vendor's agent described it as a black hole that you cannot ever find your way in and out of, which I think is probably a fair description. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, it is, and it is a black hole because nobody knows what's going on. And as I've just explained, that the process is such that you can't find who it is, and even if you did find them, you don't know whether they're telling the truth. We don't know the solicitor. You have to get their authorization to speak to their solicitor. The solicitor is going to say to them, don't give him that authorization, because the agent's just going to hound me. So I'll let you know when I'm ready, and then you can tell them. So the communication aspect is dire, and that causes a huge problem all the way up the chain. And that's part of the reason why it takes time. To add insult to injury, you probably got 2 or 3 other solicitors in the same chain upwards who are saying, thank God there's a private buyer at the bottom, because it means that I'm not having to do anything fast here, because the whole blame is going down at the bottom. So every time you phone a solicitor up the chain, they turn around and say, well, actually, we're just waiting for your solicitor, or they're waiting for their other solicitor, and the other one's waiting for everyone is always waiting for someone else. And that's where I've always said that, with the conveyancing system that we have and the people in the system, which I'm sure you're going to share with us in a minute as well, is dire. And that's why it takes so long.
Yeah, I hadn't appreciated actually the amount of work that good agents put into moving the chain along, I have to say. And I think looking at it retrospectively, I definitely think the agents have earned their commission. And I will go back to what I've said on this program previously, that in both the case of my vendor and myself, we both use traditional owner managed businesses. And when we both went to get our agent, chose our agent, we chose someone with skin in the game. They actually own the business. So, and they've been on the block for 20, 30 years in that particular location in each case. And looking at if it was just an exchange between the two of us, it would have been very, very smooth indeed. It was the very bottom end of the chain that was initially an issue. But then in terms of the agent side of things, that worked very, very well. And actually, even other people in the office, in both cases, both with my agent and the other agent, other members of staff, if you couldn't get the person that you'd been dealing with, there was a great deal of knowledge in the office about your sale from other people, probably from earwigging, but also because I believe they probably share the information with each other, and that was very reassuring in both cases. So from that point of view, I think that was good. But if we widen that discussion out to the solicitors side of things, then it gets very interesting, because that gets to a point where you think, what an antiquated, old, inept system it really is. I mean, the fact that you can instruct your solicitor to say, right, I think, are we ready to exchange? Well, yes, I think we pretty much are. Okay, so can we do it on Monday? Yes, that's fine. Let's do it all on Monday. And then radio silence. So I'm thinking, on several days last 2 weeks, I've been thinking, is anyone going to contact anybody? Because I thought we were doing it today. So then I send an email at sort of 9:30. And each case, the agents are straight back. Yeah, I'm pushing it this end, and everybody's literally pushing it. But when it comes to the solicitor side of it, absolutely no awareness. You wouldn't even think that you'd be, you'd employed these people to help you. And in some cases, even my vendor tried last 2 or 3 days ago to ring and say, what on earth is going on? And that's the person that's paying this solicitor. They even refuse to take his calls. And so if I just take you through a couple of the situations that happened, because, I mean, they're almost comical. You could almost write a play about it, really. But at the bottom end, with the private sale, actually the solicitor was quite good with communication, and did talk to my agent, because there was an appreciation that there was, impact on others. So, and maybe that did breach confidentiality, which is an interesting point I hadn't even taken into account. But anyway, there was conversation, and I think the seller was contacting the solicitor as well, and maybe information passed back through that conduit as well. But on one particular day, I think we took 7 days to get the exchange over the line, and each day everyone promised it was going to happen the following morning, because there was a cock up on the day before. But on the day that we first wanted to exchange, the private seller's solicitor didn't even bother to open the file that day. And it wasn't until the end of the day when the agent rang, said, I thought we were supposed to exchange it. Oh, she hasn't even opened the file today. Just defies belief, and yet they've been told that that was the case. And then moving up, the other little story to share on this was at the very end, and I hadn't appreciated that, that the old traditional model of conveyancing had somewhat changed, or there is another way of doing it now, and whether my vendor chose to go for a budget option, or whether, I don't know, and I should guess I never know, but it seemed to be some kind of almost like call centre approach. So I wasn't aware that, well, in my case, the solicitor was empowered to do the whole thing from start to finish, and could actually complete the process on her own, and it felt like she was running her own business within the solicitors, because she was completely in charge of the process and fully qualified to handle the whole thing from start to finish. But it seems that there are other solicitors, and you probably know this, but I hadn't found out, that essentially have a front row of form fillers who are not qualified solicitors or not qualified to complete the process. And then at some point when exchange happens, they then pass those over to another office somewhere with probably 1 or 2 fully paid solicitors who deal with the dozens of form fillers that feed to the centre, and then they rubber stamp, having checked everything, they rubber stamp it and send it back saying, yes, that's okay. And that's presumably a way of saving funds on paying proper solicitors to do the job in the first place. But of course, on that particular day, the person doing the form filling, when we had instructed them, the vendor had instructed them to exchange that day, had gone on holiday, and there was nobody on site to give the authority to proceed, and there was going to be nobody for 3 days. And in the end, everybody started shouting them, and eventually they managed to get an urgent, and all these transactions between them within their business have internal SLAs. Oh, well, we can't do that, unless it's an urgent, we can't do this. And eventually, with a load of shouting and so on, and everybody pulling a few strings here and there, I suspect, it finally got over the line a couple of days ago. But I hadn't appreciated that there was that kind of model out there. I presume you must have come across something similar.
Yeah, so yes, thank you for sharing that, Paul. It's very interesting, and I think it's great for our viewers and listeners to understand the frustration. And part of why Property Matters exists is because we're here to try and guide and show and share with people that the process that exists and the things that you can and you can't do. And I'm really grateful for your experience and share. And also, I want to thank you for actually thanking the solicitors and the estate agents and valuing exactly that they are worth their weight in gold. Whereas most people think that agents are a nuisance. It's actually to the contrary. Agents are your friends and actually push the whole system through because they are going to get a benefit at the end. They don't get paid regardless. It is paid on completion in the private treaty sales market. So they are totally motivated to try and get that across. A couple of things I want to just share with you. First of all, start with the agents. The agents, if it's a good agent, will actually have the entire chain in front of them. So then, going back to my days, and I'm sure I'll get some comments on this from people like Guy and Bob and so forth. We would flip side our memorandum sheet, and on the back of it, we would actually write the entire chain from top to bottom with the name of the agent that's dealing with it, the solicitor that was dealing with it, all their telephone contact numbers, etc., and then work all the way down to the person that was the private buyer or a first-time buyer or an investor at the bottom, and get all that. We would get all their personal details. Our business would be to get every person's contact details so that we could go up and down that chain to make sure and listen to them. When you don't have a good agent, and today that's a big problem, not because of traditional agents, but because of modern agents. They put everything onto their so-called spreadsheet on their computer system, who nobody else can really access. We used to have a traditional file that used to sit in the middle of the office, and anyone could pick it up, flip over the back, call the agent or the solicitor that's causing the problem and say, can you tell us what's going on? So that's one aspect. The second aspect of it is knowing the conveyancing system. A good agent knows the conveyancing system and knows what questions to ask the solicitor. I think what happens is a lot of agents will phone the solicitors either on a Monday or a Friday, probably two of the worst days to pick up the phone to a solicitor. Monday, they're opening files, and Friday, they're looking to close some files. And so this is normally how the call goes. Oh, good afternoon, Frank. Joe here. Just thought I'd give you a quick call to see how things are going with 25 Acacia Avenue. And that's it. That's the question. So the solicitor then goes, God's sake, what do you want me to say to you? You asked me that question 3 days ago. You don't know where the system is, so you'll just keep asking me, what's the situation? Well, there is a problem. That solicitor could actually tell them anything because they're not qualified and they don't know the process. So they could very easily say, yeah, Joe, it's great. It's no problem. Everything's going fine. Give me a call next week and I'll give you an update. All right, I've got to go, mate. I've got loads of things to do. I'll catch you later. Tell me what you've achieved in that conversation. Nothing. All they've done is tick the box by saying, we called the solicitor. So agents also need to have some knowledge of where and what part of the system the actual sale is and what questions to raise. For example, did you apply for a local search? And if so, could you tell me what date you sent it off? And when is it likely to come back? And have you had the maintenance and agreement and costs and service charge agreement back from the management company? When did you send that off? Have you got that back in time? Is there anything outstanding on the covenants? Is there have all the covenants been asked? So it's just a little bit of knowledge of the actual process that the solicitor has to go through that gives them some kudos to say, well, actually, this agent knows what he's asking, so I'll tell him. But if the agent is phoning up and asking about the weather, then the chances are they're not going to be told anything. So that's an agent education that is paramount. And by picking agents that are perhaps independent, as you say, have skin in the game, been in the business long enough to know, have a connection with the solicitors that they deal with, yes, that does make a transaction much smoother. I know, for one, having done this for as many years as I know that the ones that I want to use and the ones I don't want to use, and the ones I want to talk to, I have their mobile number. I can call them, out of hours. I can get information that I need to process this. Not only is it beneficial for me, but it's also beneficial for them, because they might be stuck on a situation. Then they will say to me, Joe, if you can get the other side to send me such and such, I need that. And once I've got that, I'm in a position to go. At least to tell there's a communication of knowledge, not just a communication of ticking the box and saying, "Oh, I've done it. Every week I'm supposed to call them." The modern agency structure is not designed that way. It's designed very much on the computer. If the file's been opened, the file's been closed. The system tells you if it's been opened. The system tells you it's not. Nobody else has access to it. So if somebody's off ill, off on holiday, whatever, the file just sits there, does nothing. It's not theirs to share and do. Why? Because there's probably a commission pool in the traditional agent, and there is an individual commission structure in the modern one. So if you are selling a property and you've put the sale together, it's up to you to make sure that that goes through, because you're going to get that. The other person is not going to pick up your file because they've got no gain in that. They'd rather work on their file. Whereas in the traditional agents, as we used to have it, we would have it as a pool. So the office would get a commission and perhaps the individual will get a commission. So basically it was all hands to the pump. Everybody had to get in there, get that sale across, get it turned over, get it into an exchange position, and subsequently get the matter completed. A huge difference in the service and what people actually are looking to do. So just to go back, agents wise, they actually do a lot of work. They're just not credited for it because they just think, oh, well, they get this chunk of commission at the end and they haven't done anything with it. Well, the truth is, if you didn't have an agent in the middle of it, half of these sales would never, ever get across the water. They just wouldn't do it. You'd be sitting there. You think 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, you would be there for 6, 7, 8 months. You might not even move for a year if somebody wasn't there pushing that situation. And hopefully your experience that you've had with a private buyer at the bottom and agents in between has clearly shown you how important it has been to have an agent with you on your side, with a firm of solicitors that know what they're doing. So that's just for now, that's my view on the agent and the benefit of them being, and why they don't like a private buyer.
Yeah, I have to say that thinking back to and I did in previous programs explain the day when I went and did, I think it was 6 or 7 viewings in a day, and met a variety of different agents. And of course, again, there were ones that I instantly warmed to and others that didn't. And I look at some of the agents that worked for some of the chain companies, the national brands, and looked at the not quite inept, but poor way they dealt with me as a potential buyer. And the way that in one case, the guy actually turned up and didn't know anything about the property. So the simplest questions I was asking, didn't even know what the answers would be. I don't know, actually. I'd have to go and check with the vendor. I mean, really, and I think now, looking back, if I'd have gone, and there was a property that was quite close to the one we fell in love with, but the agent there was so inept at what he was doing, or so out of his depth. When I think to all the pushing that's gone on to get this chain over the line, where on earth would he have been? He'd have been drowned in that process. And I wonder whether we got it over the line at all.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And the difference is this. I mean, I'm a product of originally a large corporation back in the 80s when we were working there. But the systems were so different. There was no computers. It was actually on the phone and handwritten notes on the back of a file. And actually, every week we would go through each one separately, individually, as a team, as an office, to make sure that we got them through, and we had a target of the numbers. Today, unfortunately, it's all about the computer says no, and the reality is that the people that are now operating it are operating it on the basis of volume and numbers. So how many telephone calls have you made to make an appointment? How many appointments did you turn up? How many viewing appointments? How many sales appointments? How many? It's all based on numbers because they believe that numbers actually come back to the reality. The reality is that you can have actually, if you're good at a job, you could do 10 calls and probably sell 9 properties. On the other hand, if you're not that good, you can make 100 calls and still only sell 1 property. And all you're doing is doing the job, as so to speak, and say, well, I'm doing it and it's not happening for me. And there's no one actually guiding them and taking them through. So, like I said earlier on, if the agents themselves almost put themselves in that position of learning what the conveyancing process is, they would actually value it more because they'd understand it more, and they wouldn't be calling solicitors on a Friday and a Monday because they know they're not going to answer their calls. They need to pick a time. In fact, they should always talk to the solicitor and say, I want to chase this up and I don't want to harass you all week, every week. Can you tell me what is a good day or a good time for me to call you? If it's at 3:30 on Wednesday afternoon, which is the best time for me to call you, I'll make a diary note and I'll call you at 3:30 on a Wednesday afternoon because I've got 5 cases with you and I want an update on all 5 of them at that time. The chances are you'd get a proper reflection, a proper an answer, and you can then actually evaluate what the part of that chain and what that process is gonna do. So certainly, private agent and knowing the conveyancing system is very, very key.
I would imagine, actually, in those chains with some of these more junior members of staff, I guess, you probably get handed to somebody else who's going to handle the whole process for you, and because they'll be at the front trying to get more numbers on the board, wouldn't they, really?
Yes, there should be a teamwork. Now, you go back to your solicitors earlier on, you made a comment about the type of operators that exist. So, first of all, the conveyancing process of opening the file, as they call it, getting the basic information, name, address, telephone number, proof of address, proof of identity, doing the AML, doing all that basic stuff that they need to do in order to open the file is someone that's very, very junior, probably someone who is not even a trainee solicitor, but has got a job with the firm with the view that one day they are going to become a solicitor. So they're the front line of people that you're going to deal with.
Yeah,
They
that
are
was that was a
employed.
para. In my case, that was a paralegal who did that, and that was the initial contact. You're right.
Yeah, so they are what we call the form fillers. It's their job. They've got to learn the game. So this is where they start. But in the meantime, it's the process of that they're doing. And like you say, if somebody's on a holiday or ill or whatever, and it's their file, that it's just not going to get opened in time. It's not going to be dealt in time. The solicitor, the name that you are always given, is the person at the top of the chain. So in this case, let's say I was a solicitor. They'll say, well, your solicitor, your legal representative is Joe Joshi. But below me, there's about 5 different layers of people, right? And so when you call me and say, "Hi, Joe, can you tell me what's happening with the file?" I want to be able to, in today's world, tap into that computer and see where the rest of the people below me have managed to get that file to. But if some days those people haven't done or even opened the file, then I'm the one that I'm going to get shot. I'm the person they're going to say, "Well, actually, you're my solicitor. Why aren't you doing this?" So then I've got to go kick ass at the bottom. And if I've got a kick ass at the bottom for one sale, then I've got a kick ass for the bottom for all the other sales. So it's just time consuming, actually probably not that efficient. But unfortunately, because of the volume of work these solicitors take, and it's based on volume, they need to make sure that there's enough work coming in for all of the system and all the process and all the people in the chain. The second part of the solicitors is that whether it's a cheap end or a top end, they are going to get paid come what may. They're going to get paid for an abortive sale. So if your sale goes wrong, they're going to turn around and say to you, I did all this work. These are my hours. This is what you signed for. You need to pay me for the work that has been done. I know you've lost your sale. Now, you might have actually lost that sale because of an inept solicitor or somebody else that's in the chain. But you still got to pay your solicitor because, as far as he's concerned, he's done his work and he's got a legal right to charge you. Now, if that was an agent, you'd be saying, well, you haven't done anything. I'm not paying you. So the agent has to do something for free. The solicitor has to be paid for it because he's a qualified solicitor and he deserves that. On the other side of it, if he's turned around and done the transaction, he's going to charge you. So he's a winner either way. Time is absolutely of no issue to that person. because as far as they're concerned, they've been instructed they're going to get paid either way. And if it takes them a day, or if it takes them 24 months, or it takes them 24 years, they're going to get their money come what may. And so that makes it really, really difficult. And the problem is called belief. The belief is that every buyer and every seller thinks that the God in this transaction is their solicitor. To be perfectly honest with you, it's far from being the God, but they believe that that's what they're going to do. My solicitor says I will have a ship tomorrow afternoon at 2:30, and if he says that, then he must be right. But the agent has said that it's not going to happen. I don't believe the agent, but the agent is probably right because he's actually on the front line doing all the digging, making all the questions and answering everything. But the only person the client believes is my solicitor says. And if my solicitor says it, it must be gospel, which is why I say they think they're God. And that's the reason the transactions get delayed every single time. It's archaic, as you've rightly learned yourself, having gone through that. And we're really glad you have gone through that because nobody will believe anybody else. But you know, you got nothing to lose or gain. And you're a customer who's just had that experience. I say that every single day, and they think that I'm having a go because I'm in the business. Well, I'm having a go because it is my business to have a go. And if I don't do that, we won't get half the jobs done. And you now have learnt that, having that own experience yourself.
And you can see why the self-employed model is getting so much more popular, because if you've got a good agent, and he or she chooses to go out on their own and create their own luck, and then really be on the buyer's side, that you can see why that's growing so fast, and the whole online model is falling apart.
Well, the online model, whether it's individual and independent, the word online, Paul, I mean, people say, oh, we're online. Well, actually, the whole damn world is now online. Who isn't? You and I are online. You know, here we are online now. Everything's online. You can buy a biscuit online if you want. So everyone is online, but this word online conjures up something different in everyone's mind, and they
Yeah,
think,
I'm
oh
talking
well,
the purple bricks scenario.
yeah. I know. I'm coming to that. And so, do you want my job? So the online vision that the people have is that, oh, being online, be it's Purple Bricks or Yopa or whatever, but even your traditional Connells or your Countrywide, they're all online. Every one of them is online. It's just that they conjure up this image that, you know, you're getting a better service, or in some case, a absolutely rubbish service from someone who's online. Now, the independent guys that go independently, working with perhaps a operative like, as you say, Purple Bricks, who are a rude word in the business of a state agency, but I'll come back to it in a moment. The reality is that they go and work with them individually because they're motivated individually. So when people come through your door or anyone's door as an individual, they buy that person. You bought whoever sold your property, you bought the one that sold you their property. And you decided that that was the person that you wanted to work with. And so, and whether they were online or in the moon or down the toilet, it didn't really matter. It was the person that you bought, and you felt that they could do the job, and that's why you instructed them. And that's why more and more independent agents are setting up, because they know that it's them that they actually get instructed. People like that person. They have the belief and the confidence and the trust in that person to be able to get this matter through. So I think that's where that aspect of it comes through. In the agency world, it was absolutely messed up by people like so-called online. It's happened for years, 40 odd years I've been in the game. There've been people come and go in that time for supposedly bucket shop, Mr. 1%, Mr. 30p, Mr. this, Mr. that. They come and they go, Mr. Purple Bricks, Mr. Yellow Bricks, Mr. whatever you want to call them. They come and they go, and they think that they are coming to buck the trend. They are the disruptors in the agency market. Well, you know, the traditional agent that's been around for 20, 30, 40, 45 years, people like me, are still doing their job when people like Purple Bricks have come and gone, Strike have come and gone, done millions, and then had been sold for £1. They have changed on them constantly. people buy them and think that's cheap. We all know that it's not always the practice. The cheapest aren't always the best. But I'm not saying that the best aren't always the cheapest. The best can be expensive, but it's about what you value.
Interesting. I hope that was of use this morning to share that information with everybody. I certainly have had my eyes opened, and that's really, as we said earlier, what Property Matters is all about, telling you all about the world of property every week. And we'll see you again next week for another Property Matters.